last few years, the pandemic caused a sudden change in routines. And that led to people reevaluating their work and priorities, and to considering and pursuing new ideas and initiatives. And it was during that pandemic that local dad Matt Rufo became a children's book author. Kathie McCarthy was named a senior hero, and Glenda Thomas, she came up with the idea to recognize seniors for their valuable contributions to the Framingham community. Welcome, Glenda. It's so nice to have you here today. Please tell us, how did you come up with the idea for the Framingham Senior Hero Awards?
Well, hello, Audrey, and thank you. So, during COVID, especially at the very beginning, we heard about seniors being locked into their homes. If they lived in senior communities, they were locked in their rooms. They couldn't come out to socialize with other people. And just think about how drastic of a change that was to us. So as a result, I thought, let's give them something to look forward to. Because again, Framingham has grown from being a town to a city based upon the volunteer, a lot of it based upon the volunteer time of our seniors. So I said, when they get to be with their families and their friends, how nice would it be to be able to say, I was recognized by the city for these initiatives that I have worked on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a very thoughtful idea. And I'm just curious, how did you then actually get the idea to become a reality?
So I presented it at a Council on Aging board meeting, and it was approved to go off and have a subcommittee. And Mark Goldman agreed to be my co-chair. And so it was really Mark, Grace O'Donnell, the director of the Callahan Center, and myself that started. And we got together and we had ideas, and we kind of formulated that we wanted to be on valuing diversity and inclusivity. And it had to be volunteers. Okay, it's based upon the time that you have volunteered in the community. And so we reached out to other people to join us. Currently, we have David Fuller, who's been has been a long time resident of Framingham. We have Margaret Shepard, as we know, who's been a councilwoman. She's also ran for state representative. We have Kathie McCarthy now as a member, and Brian Sullivan, who's also on the Council on Aging along with Kathie. Grace O'Donnell, and Robin Dale.
Those are all people on your committee?
On the committee.
So what does the committee do? Yeah.
So what happens now is that you say, how do we come about it? So we came up with the framework. And the first year, as you know, is always, you learn as you go along.
Right.
But it was, I think, again, because we were focusing on seniors, we were focusing on the volunteer, I was just really overwhelmed with the number of nominations that we got. And it's very hard to go through and identify who's going to be the winner this year. We look at 4 winners for it being in public services, health, social services, and then there's arts.
How many people were nominated in the first year?
We run about 30 people being nominated each year.
And you had to pick 4 out of the 30.
We have to pick 4 out of the 30.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have, each member of the committee go through and they do that individual assessment. And then we bring all of that information together and we look at what's the ranking that falls out of that. And there's a discussion. One of the key things in ensuring that your person is going to be heavily considered is by giving us the story. Why do you think that they have made a difference to the community when it comes to diversity and inclusivity? A lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes we do get people nominating people and assuming that because they have volunteered in the community for years, that everybody knows them, and we don't.
So they don't tell the story, you're saying, as deeply as they should about how it impacted inclusion and diversity in the community. Can you give an example? Like, I know, you know, you're trying to really show an impact, right?
Right. So, you know, a couple of them stand out. Marilee Herring, she was one of the founding members of the Martin Luther King Day for Metro West, which is a big part of Framingham, okay? You look at Father Don Pachuto, okay, who worked tirelessly on behalf of the underserved in our community. Ann Sullivan, okay, Ann worked about getting the chemical spill cleaned up on the south side of the city because of the impact to the community and to the children that were going to school in that area. All right. Herb Chasen, okay, looking at what he's done with Hoops and Homework and how that started out from renovating a basketball court to now going to a full-blown program and center. You know, Kathie McCarthy. Kathie, I was really excited to hear Kathie receive the award because she was for health and services. All right. And how she just really during the COVID time, excuse me, no matter who, was trying to make them feel that they were a part of the community and not an exception. So if it meant that you didn't speak English, Kathie was very creative by going off and finding an app to help to translate. You know, because we do have multiple languages in our community. And as much as, you know, we think that everybody should be speaking English, not everyone does.
Exactly. So obviously that inclusion speaks for itself right there, giving other people access and making sure they're included by being able to speak the language and facilitate that dialogue. So you've mentioned 4 of the award recipients right there, and you've had 8 so far. Who were the other? Right. Who were the other 4?
So then we also have Dr. Ceballos, who was the president of Framingham State University, and he did a lot to keep the Danforth Museum as a part of our community, because we were running the risk of it moving to another community. We had Reverend Tolson, who's done a lot, again, in the health area around the underserved communities. And I know I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
I'm sure it'll come to you, and we'll cover that. But you've had 8 so far, and there will be 4 every year, correct?
Yes, okay. For the 4 areas that we have talked about.
Okay, you want to state those 4 areas again?
Social services, arts and culture, health and public services. So those are the 4.
Okay. And I'm sure we'll get those other 2 people mentioned as well. That'll be very, and then we'll have the full 8, and we have 4 more to look forward to. So we need to really understand, you know, just what you're looking for and how people can actually be a part of the process. I think right now, even just talking about this is making people want to nominate other people. And I think that spelling out the process for those nominations is very important. So thank you so much for doing that. What about, do you think there's a big enough pool of people in Framingham that fit all of that criteria?
Of course. We're a city. We were the largest country. I mean, largest town.
That's true. That is true. And so, and what about the age? You start the age at 60. Any thought of lowering that to 55 or not? What was the reason for 60?
So when I originally thought of it, I thought about people that were no longer working, but could continue to give to the community through their volunteer efforts. So I go the opposite. Maybe we need to increase it, not lower it. And I know there's been that discussion because from the Council on Aging of Callahan Center, we look at you being 55 plus.
Right, that's why I was curious why you made it
Yeah.
60.
But most of our 55 plus are still working. And so we are targeting the older citizens in our community. And, you know, it's focused on their volunteer. So you do have to be a resident, because sometimes I have people come up, I got a perfect candidate, Glenda. And they start talking to me about that candidate. And I said, okay, do they live in Framingham?
Right. Let's weed out the people. Let's start going down the list of criteria. Right.
And they go, no, they live in Metro West. I said, no, they got to live in Framingham. So we've had a couple of instances where people they lived in Framingham when they were nominated. They moved outside of Framingham afterwards. But that's, you know, you can't stop people's lives, but it gets back to what they did for us here in the city of Framingham.
Right, exactly. Okay, so it's going to stay 60, and you think you have plenty of people for the nomination pool. And then what do you, as a committee, you go through the nomination forms and you have a dialogue, you said, and you try to make sure that everybody is meeting all the criteria that you have put in place.
Right, and so we're looking at people that have made a difference. You know, sometimes it's through being a leader, taking a leadership role. Other times it may just be how they have made an impactful difference, and we have seen that impact grow as a result of their initiative.
Right. Yeah. I think you want to mention Nubia. Did you mention Nubia?
I did not mention Nubia. So Nubia Gastra was one of our winners, and she actually was kind of a mentor. And for a lot of the Portuguese, Brazilian people coming into the community, and she had advocated on behalf of them, helping them get ingrained in the community. And as a business person, because she was one of the first Brazilian businesses that we had in Framingham. So she became a role model for other businesses to grow. Okay.
And Faith Tolson?
And Faith, I mentioned Faith Tolson because she was, because she is a pastor here at Greater Framingham Church, but she also has done a lot in the medical health side as far as trying to make sure that everybody is getting good, equal health care.
Okay, good. Because I think in 2022, they were all together. I mean, you had Javier Savalos, Herb Chasin, Kathie McCarthy, and Faith Tolson in 2022.
We had them, but Herb was virtual. So we didn't have everybody, which it seems like in the past couple of years of the award that we do have someone that's going to be virtual. So when you ask about the awards program, we're keeping it small. It's not to be a grandiose, but we want the people to feel recognized. We have our state reps and our state Senate representative giving proclamations, so citations for recognizing their efforts. The mayor will come in and talk and congratulate them. And then, so we'll give them a plaque. It's, you know, it's a very nice award that you can cherish for many years. And we then have some small refreshments.
And where is it usually held?
It's usually held at the Callahan Center.
But you do allow virtual participation?
We do allow virtual participation.
Okay, great. And this lives on. I mean, you had your inaugural group, then you had year 2, and 2023 is year 3.
Year 3.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find is very rewarding is that you find out more about our neighbors as we're reading their nominations. We find out even more about the awardees and what they have done for the community. So it's like finding those hidden gems to be our unsung heroes. You know, you read it and you think, okay, but then once, you know, we really get their stories pulled together and you listen to them when they're receiving the awards, you're like, wow, you know,
It's pretty
I,
impressive.
yes. And you've been there, so you get to see, you know.
I think it's something everybody should tune into or attend, because just being able to honor people who have maybe gone unnoticed for so many years, who've made major contributions to the community, it's very heartwarming, very touching. And to see them, most of these people are not people who do it because they are looking for the acknowledgement. I mean, they're looking to help others, which I think is the beauty of it. And you know, it's very surprising to them sometimes when they're then given these awards, because they never expected it, and that's not why they did the work that they did.
And exactly, you know, because they may not realize how much of a difference that they were making when they were actually doing some of the work. But when you look at it cumulative over the years, and I think it gives them an opportunity to reflect. And then even when they have that opportunity to reflect, it's like, I did that.
Right, exactly. So I think that people who want to nominate others can just Google Framingham Senior Heroes Awards, and you'll be taken to the link. Or again, Glenda did provide the city website earlier in our discussion, so that you could go to that webpage, framinghamma.gov, and on that page there's a link that says Framingham Senior Heroes Awards. So thank you very much for being here today, Glenda. Greatly appreciated it. You know, Glenda pointed out that while there are many seniors who are very active in the community today, there are also those who may not be in the limelight right now, but who do deserve to be acknowledged for their past work and their contributions to the Framingham community. Well, Kathie McCarthy, she falls into both of those categories, and she was named a senior hero in 2022. She's going to be joining me in just 1 minute after this break, so we will be right back.
Women are bad with money.
It's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now,
we've got something to say.
Save it. Save the old-fashioned advice, the empty excuses. It's all worthless, unlike us.
To our fellow females, it is time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Contributing to our futures, investing in our independence.
Until we're no longer 80%
more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
So again, we say to that, save it.
The falsehoods, the feelings of fault, then the funds.
Learn how to save for your retirement at wesaysaveit.org.
After years of work with Framingham's Volunteer Medical Reserve Corps, Kathie McCarthy received a Framingham Senior Hero Award in 2022. Out of all the nominations submitted, 4 winners are chosen each year. So, Kathie, I'm so happy to have you here to talk about this. It's really great to have you here and to congratulate you on receiving that award in 2022. And I'm curious, did you know about the fact that you were nominated, or did you first find out about it when you actually were selected?
Actually, I had no idea. And those of us who volunteer over many years don't do it because we're looking for reward. It's our own reward.
Well, I was thinking that because, you know, anyone who pays attention in Framingham knows that you volunteer.
Yes.
And you do a lot of work. I mean, I think that you're always raising your hand to help out in many different ways, not just one particular area of interest. And sometimes people who do the most work, who volunteer often, who are seen in a lot of different places, are the people that are overlooked for things like this. So it was very nice to see you get the award.
It was, and I'll tell you, I was thrilled. I was sitting at the desk at our office. It was tax season. And
you're in an accounting firm.
Yeah. And I picked up the cell phone, and a friend of mine who happens to be on the committee called, and it's like they're going to chat. And she told me, and I had no idea, and I'm sitting there flabbergasted.
What did she say? Do you remember?
She said, "You have been chosen." For the category of health and as a 2022
What was it, public health
senior
and safety?
Yes.
Yeah, so as a,
for the 2022 Senior Heroes Award, and I was like, me? Me? Could you repeat that?
so in other words, you were shocked.
Yes.
Oh, you made her repeat it. You made the person repeat it. I don't blame you.
It was like, I thought you wanted me to ask me to help in some way.
Which would have been more the norm. You would have
Yes,
just said yes. And so that's great. So it came as a very nice surprise.
Yes. And then the committee and Grace, it was so welcoming.
You're talking about Grace O'Donnell at the
Yes,
Callahan.
Grace O'Donnell, an amazing giver to our community, and we are so grateful. But the committee was welcoming, thorough, and now I'm actually on volunteering to be next year's.
That's so exciting. Let me
Yes.
ask you this though first. Did you ever get to see the actual nomination? Because there's a form people fill out to nominate, right?
Yes, no.
Oh, you didn't get to see that? Because I'm sure on that form, someone said a lot of nice things about your work.
Yes. I guess so. I hear so.
And so what did you have to do next, right after you found out about the award?
They told me that I'd hear from Grace in the committee, and I sat there. I was like, called over my husband Bill, and the next one I was like, Bill, what do you do? And then I called my kids. And can't believe it. I was so excited. That was the end of that.
And they probably said, it's about time. You've been
they was like, why are you surprised? But anyway, they told me Grace would be in touch with me and the committee, and they were. And then they had an intern that called me, kind of interviewed to get background information. And Grace, and especially Grace, filled in the blanks of what was history of me and the
So they were
MRC.
developing a whole profile on you once you were selected, beyond what was on the nomination form.
So that they'd be prepared for their program.
Sure.
And make sure they were thorough. And very impressed with all of them. Of course, it was through the COVID time. And I think it was a challenge for them, and they rose above it.
Wonderful.
Just amazing.
And so how long, let's talk, I want to talk a little bit about your volunteer work also, because even though this particular work on the Medical Reserve Corps was what was highlighted when you received the award, you have been volunteering for Framingham in many capacities for a long time.
Decades. Yeah.
Decades?
Yes.
When did it start? Do you remember how it started?
Well, actually, through different things through Framingham that I heard about through my church and through the community. I don't know what they called it, Metro West News before. And so I'd raise my hand on that. Someone had helped me, asked for help in the neighborhood. There'd be planning board meetings or something, gather up people. We were looking for a sound barrier in our neighborhood against the pike.
Oh, to keep the car noise from
So
coming into
that was a couple of years of work in regional meetings and all that stuff. So, you know, a lot of person to person, can you help? And that's what you do, over and above your regular work and all that. And then when my kids came of age to go to kindergarten, I was gung-ho at PTO, as I know you have been as well with me.
Absolutely.
Over the years. And so many years of helping and, you know, fundraising, and even, you know, mixing cement to put the augers, after the augers went down for playgrounds. I mean,
just
down
a lot
to
of
the basics.
hands-on stuff.
Yes.
A lot of people do get involved first through their kids with the schools,
Yes.
even though yours might not have been exactly first because you had other
Yes.
neighborhood issues with noise coming in from the pike. But a lot of people do get involved when their kids go into the schools and start to pay attention to what's happening a little closer, because they're concerned about how it's going to impact
Right.
them.
And
That happens for a lot of people.
Yes. And I think it's an opportunity to meet so many new people.
That's true. It's a good
And
opportunity.
beyond your regular neighborhood or
Right.
your regular friends, you meet people with different backgrounds, and different thoughts on things and see different perspectives. And I think that makes us all better in the long run. And so that's kind of been my push of myself to learn more about other people as well.
So when did you first then get involved with the Medical Reserve Corps? And what is the Medical Reserve Corps?
Its Medical Reserve Corps is not just for Framingham, but we had it through Framingham in the state. Mass Response, so to speak. And
what do you mean Mass Response?
Mass Response is a statewide, group of volunteers, trained and ready, prepared. So you do all the training for emergency management and be prepared to step up when there's an emergency.
Like what kind of emergency?
It could be anything. A weather emergency, maybe have to open a dam, have a shelter.
So you're saying the Medical Reserve Corps is part of Mass Response?
Yes, and we're prepared locally, and we're in transition to expand regionally as well, because that's all statewide transitioning. And it's basically for people who have gone through the training, know the incident command steps of what you need to do when you check in, when you're asked to deploy, and you're there and prepared before the emergency happens. And you can be non-medical or medical, because you need a lot of people movers and direction people. So it's not just the person who checks the blood pressure or gives a shot.
So when did you find out about Medical Reserve Corps, and when did you decide to start volunteering with that?
Well, through the subcommittee on public safety and town meeting, and I was on the disability commission, and I was the liaison to the police at that time. Communication back and forth. I think we can better communicate in so many ways. And they said, well, we have the Medical Reserve, maybe you could help out on that and be an advocate for the disabled. So that's what I tend to do because I'm physically disabled. I think about what the perspective and needs are of those that might be in that emergency or in that activity that need something a little different to fulfill their needs, to be able to fulfill everything.
So you started volunteering, and then the police actually someone in the police force made that recommendation to you.
Well, I had gone to many meetings, as I do. And I was with the Disability Commission, and I was coordinating with them for, they used to have, and still do, liaisons to other departments and whatever. And I knew the health department and how they work together. And it's always a concern that maybe the general public needs don't necessarily match what the disabled person, a person's needs are, and to always keep that in mind. So that's how I was asked by the Medical Reserve, can you help us and be that perspective of you? So.
And how long has it been? How long have you been doing it?
This is about 15 years for that. I was disability before that and many other things. But
that's wonderful, yeah.
It is the most beautiful, fulfilling, extra volunteer job over the years that I have done, because everybody comes together for a common good to help everybody else. And it doesn't get into all that other drama, because the drama itself of the need is the focus.
Good point, good point.
Yeah.
Have you ever been deployed?
Yeah, we did. I mean, even the simple things like the drug take-back every year.
Explain that, because not many people know
what
that is.
So people have medicines over the counter or prescription medicines. It's past their date and some people used to put it down the drain. That messes up the water system and all that, and or put it in the trash, and that ends up environmentally not well, too. So twice a year, the National Drug Enforcement Agency has it, and we are usually, Framingham is a regional center for a lot of the other communities to bring on. The DEA is actually there. Drugs are packed up, no questions asked. We have a well-planned drive-through, so you drive through or walk in the parking lot.
No questions asked, right?
No,
Just any medication,
you just put your
can
stuff
get
in a
rid of it.
bag, and it comes, and we put it in the box. No one cares.
Good.
And then all those boxes are brought with the DEA up to closed incineration safely, so it doesn't affect the environment, and we can get these things out of the homes, because oftentimes people don't realize that you have gas. Some people might have an addiction or something you don't even know of, and they maybe go to the bathroom, go through your medicine cabinet. So a lot of different ways people can get medicines that they shouldn't have. And oftentimes people have, I got this medicine they say I got it for such and such, and I was allergic to it, so I still had it sitting there. So it's a way of responsibly for our environment and for ourselves to make sure that we do that.
And you do that with the gun take back program too, or just
We coordinate with the police and the Medical Reserve Corps and the DEA. So it's a group thing. We've done sheltering through the Public Works and the Police Department. We've actually set up shelters at times. And
so now let me just ask you, how does that work that you do? Because one of the big criteria is that your work has to contribute to the inclusivity and the diversity of Framingham. How do you feel that work contributed?
Well, I think first of all, it doesn't matter who you are, but in an emergency, you're taken care of. Second of all, especially through this COVID stretch or any kind of major health issue, but especially that, we were giving out, we were all, carefully covered. We might have been isolated for work or whatever at home or at work, but we came, we volunteered, put maybe our health at risk because we wanted to help others. Now, even though we had masks and everything on, I used to always say, when people come in and they might not be speaking the same language, look like us, or act like us, they can see our eyes. And I think it really makes a difference when people can see the smile through your eyes and the welcoming, I'm going to help you. Mm-hmm. Also, whether I spoke to their language or not, I had a translator on my phone. They could speak, I could speak, and we'd get together. Wonderful. And it really was such an inclusive, and I felt really like I made a difference, and all of us did.
Well, obviously, it was noteworthy because that's why you were nominated, and that's why you were awarded. Now,
one of many, but I think that's the idea, that we work as a team.
Sure. Now, you're on the committee that is going to evaluate other nominees to receive the award. How do you feel about that?
I'm thrilled. I actually said I will help in the future if you need me, and I did. I have, and that's why also this is a good opportunity to ask the public to think about those you know who do that extra just because who they are, not what they expect to get from it. And that extra for people who are different than them, who are non-represented, and think about that, 60 and over, and try to get a nomination in. So I hope we'll get a lot of nominations when these are in.
Well, and thanks.
And I thank you for that.
And thank you for all that you've done and all that you have committed to continue to do.
Thank you.
You know, after hearing Kathie's story, you may be inspired to nominate someone who also deserves to be recognized for their work and their contribution to the community. Someone who has shown that they value diversity and who's made Framingham more inclusive. Don't hesitate because the deadline is approaching. Start right now by Googling Framingham Senior Heroes Awards nomination form and just follow the links. You'll be able to nominate someone. And coming up next, when a local dad had more time for storytelling during COVID, it led to his first children's book. We're going to be right back with local children's book author Matt Rufo.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
When schools and businesses shut down during COVID, Matt Rufo had a lot more time for storytelling with his daughter. And that's when Freddie the Frog was born in his first children's book. And now Matt has written 4 books. I'm so happy to have you here to talk about this, Matt.
Thanks.
When did you decide that as a construction business owner, you also wanted to write children's books? And how did it all happen? How did it come together for you?
So it's funny, back in college, I was an English major to start, and a lot of the ideas came way back when, and then they kind of fell to the side because of regular work and career and jobs.
Those kinds of things that get in the way, like needing money.
All that boring stuff, yeah. Who needs to pay their bills?
Pay the rent.
Right, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so then being home with my daughter during like COVID times, you know, she was little, and you know, telling her stories, keeping her occupied in between like online classes and stuff. Brought me back to the idea of, geez, maybe I can put these together into an actual book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having no idea what I'm doing.
So in other words, were you telling her like stories that you had made up yourself?
Yeah, I'd test them out on her, you know, during the day just to occupy her time. She makes up stories too, you know, especially as she's gotten older now.
So you think of like a little character and run a story by her and see how she responded?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was cool. So I mean, I have so many different characters that I'd love to be doing all the time that are just sitting there waiting. But unfortunately, I don't have like an unlimited bag of money.
Right.
And the money tree died out in the backyard.
Oh,
so,
no.
Yeah, I actually
bad
have
weather
to,
maybe, I don't know.
I have to do occasional real work. It's very depressing.
Oh, I understand that, you know, but what's good about it is that even though you do what you do to make a living, you know, you're not letting your passion go. You're following your passion. You're still finding a way to do it, which is so exciting. And to do it with your own daughter and to test these characters out on her is very cool.
It is fun.
How old is she now?
She's going to be 7 in June.
7.
Yeah, she's in 1st grade.
And her name is?
Samantha.
Well, I'm sure she's very excited about you writing all of these books. And,
she is.
And being a part of it with you. I mean, that's, who knows where that's going to take her.
Yeah, I mean, it gets her going. She has her own, she wants to have her own business. She wants to be a writer. She wants to be a scientist. You know, she has like 12 different things that she wants to do. She has her office that she sets up.
That's so cute.
Yeah, but because like for jobs, like my regular, you know, my job, my business, my construction business, contracting business, whatever you want to call it, she would come out with me on jobs, you know, because my wife was working. She's a teacher, so she couldn't go to school with her. So while we were home for those 2 years, if I had to go look at a project, she would just come with me. Mm-hmm. So she'd carry the clipboard or, you know, whatever, so she was the assistant.
That makes her feel very official,
Very
I'm sure.
official, yeah. The tape measure, yeah, she likes doing all that stuff.
And in addition, she has a mom who's a teacher.
Yeah, Tara's been
so many good role models.
Fabulous.
What school does your wife teach at?
She was at Potter Road for, 18 years, I think. And she's at Stapleton as a social, emotional, behavioral coach.
Wow.
Because that's so much easier.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I don't know. Yeah, so, but she's so great with children. Yeah. You know, I'm lucky. I didn't know, you know, being a dad, I was kind of winging it. Luckily, she's so smart with all that kind of stuff. Take kind of, you know.
Sounds like you have a great family team going there.
It is.
Which is really exciting.
We're a fun group.
So, when you wrote the first book, you decided on a character called Freddie the Frog.
Mm-hmm.
How did you arrive at Freddie the Frog?
So I always liked Curious George growing up as a kid.
Oh yeah,
and
famous Curious George.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the look of him, the feel of him is in my head. I can't draw at all. I'm the worst artist. You know, the illustrator did a great job bringing Freddie to life, and so the fireman that Freddie is friends with, I can barely say it because of the rhyming, but they.
Is this in the Flying His Frisbee book?
Yeah,
Okay.
And his first French fries.
Oh, so the next book, Freddie the Frog, first French fries.
Yeah,
Yep.
see, it's tough to say.
It is Freddie the Frog's first French fries. Lots of F's
it
there.
is. There's too many. So they're all. So take a step back. My wife has a master's in linguistics.
Mm-hmm.
So when I wrote the story the first time, she's like, "Oh, well, that's alliteration you're using," and I'm like, "Okay, sure. What's alliteration? You know, I just rhyming. It's whatever." Anyways, so she said, "Oh, you know, kids really learn really well on, you know, with alliteration." So the first 3 books were all based around that idea, and I just happened to pick the letter F just for whatever reason. I don't know why. Just kind of, that's what I chose.
And so, are you trying to help kids learn the alphabet?
Yeah. So that was the idea. My dream was to have a book for every letter of the alphabet with a different character. And maybe that'll happen someday. But it kind of goes all together with, you know, friends, fun, learning, trying something new. It's okay to be afraid. Like Freddie's afraid of the Frisbee the first time. He didn't know what it was when he tries to throw it.
Oh.
Yeah, when he wanted to try French fries and Frankfurters, he was afraid again, but he trusted his friend because his friend said that it was, you know, it was okay. You'll like it, give it a try, and if you don't, it's okay. You know, kind of like simple real life kind of things. So all the books kind of try to keep things simple. You know, I don't like to get too fancy with any of it, you know, and that's kind of where they all go.
So after the 2 books about Freddie, you introduced some new characters.
Yeah, Amanda the Anteater.
So Amanda the Anteater. Where did that come from?
So
of course, it's the letter A. We know that.
It's the letter A, obviously. And I thought of like an animal that you don't see very often in books. Like at first, I
don't think you ever see an anteater.
Yeah, you don't. But Amanda, she's pretty cool. And again, she was trying something new. You know, because anteaters eat ants, right? And one day she decided she didn't want to eat ants anymore. So of course, there's letters that are associated with A. You know, avocado, for example, apples. She didn't have any of that before, so.
So we got that down, and it's very interesting too, because how can an anteater stop eating ants?
Yeah, you wouldn't think so.
No.
And all the other anteaters were floored. They're like, "What are you doing?"
Sounds fun.
Yeah,
Sounds like a fun story.
It was fun.
And then your 4th book, Goodnight Grammys.
Yeah, Goodnight.
Where did that come from?
So that was when my wife's mother passed away, just recently, you know, in the last year and a half. I wanted to do something dedicated to her, you know, dedicated to the family, my daughter, you know, all of us together. So it was a real night at the house that the story is based around, where Sammy, my daughter, that's what she likes to go by. She says goodnight to, you know, her grandmother. You know, says a prayer, and we're not super religious. You know, we're more spiritual, I would think, to be perfectly frank. But we always taught that kind of stuff, you know, to Sam, even at a young age, that's more important than anything else. So, you know, she had my mother-in-law's old Bible, and she's like, I want to say a prayer to her before bed, you know, and so that's like in the story, you know. So
and is it a book that also will help children who are going through a loss?
Yeah, I think so. That's what people have told me. You know, it helped her, it helped my wife. You know,
when kids go through a loss for the first time, it does kind of change them forever.
Yeah, yeah.
They start to realize a few things that
it's that
make
weird,
them more adult as a kid.
It's a weird age too, because you know she's still little, but you know she was close with her grandmother. You know, so it's hard. You know, I feel like every year you get older, the tougher it is to lose somebody.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any right or wrong way to deal with it, but I thought that this was the best way to portray that. And she even simplified it, you know, some of her quotes in the book of, you know, just saying goodnight to her, you know. and she always thinks about her, and
So sweet.
yeah.
Do you run these stories by her, like before they're finalized? Do you tell her what you're saying and ask her what she thinks?
Oh yeah.
It's a real team effort, a real
She's
father-daughter team effort.
She
there.
really gets into it, and Tara too. I mean, with all her experience with children and all her friends that are teachers,
yeah.
they've been.
Has
they've
she
been
read them
great.
in her classes?
Yep, in Sammy's classes, and my wife back when she was in class.
Yeah.
Since she's been at Stapleton, obviously not that much.
Right.
And she's not a big salesperson, so.
She's not trying to sell the books. But
She's not selling the
help.
books.
Oh,
No,
gotcha.
she is not. She's not my marketing person. Nothing
Okay.
against her. She's the best, but.
Okay. But it's nice to hear that the books are making the rounds.
Thanks.
In a lot of different ways. So let's talk a little bit about the wonderful illustrations, because illustrations are a very important part of children's books. How did you create yours?
So it was funny. I never met the illustrator. They were part of the publishing company, and I talked to her and told her, like, oh, I like the look, for example, of this frog, and compared him to like others. I was like, oh, I always liked Kermit the Frog when I was a kid. And then the frog on the cereal box, Smack'ems, I think was the name of the cereal. Anyways, like a combination of those two, and again, that Curious George kind of Berenstain Bears kind of look in my head I had.
Was this all online that you did it? Because you
on
said
the
you
phone, on the phone and online.
And,
just
and
emails
so
back and forth.
Sharing the story and telling the illustrator what kinds of things you liked.
Yep.
And then they would give you samples and.
I sent her pictures too, and I was like, oh, is there a way to mix?
Because the illustrations are just so friendly and very, just very happy looking.
Thanks.
So they seem to go well with the stories.
Yeah, I try to keep them again simple. Like I like simple. I don't like flashy or maybe that's what sells. I'm not big on that part. I figure I enjoy the writing, I enjoy putting the books together. My daughter, my wife love them, and our friends love them. And my mother's been a teacher for like 37 years, 42 years. I forget how long. She's still teaching. She's like 72.
There seems to be some natural talent there in the family that all goes towards this kind of work.
I think so. I just wish one of us could draw. That would be great.
That would help. You never know. It might end up being Sammy. You never know.
She's definitely a better drawer than I am.
So that brings me to this question about Sammy and you working together. Obviously, you say she's involved. Do you think that she'll ever write one with you?
It would be cool if we did that. As she gets older.
What do you think the subject would be? Have you ever talked about it?
We haven't yet. No.
Okay.
But we've been working on songs for the books too. That's like the next thing with a musician friend of mine. So
nice. That's a great idea.
She loves that. Well, I'm also learning the piano with her. We go to Center Music. So we have piano lessons the same night on Mondays. So that's another avenue that, of course, doesn't, we're paying. Another thing that doesn't have an immediate.
It'll all come together at some point, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes.
How often do you actually find yourself writing, and how often, do you think that you'll continue writing?
Yeah, I think I will. I mean, I started writing first in college.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were an English major, right?
Yeah.
And what were you writing back then?
Poetry, short stories. Had the idea that I was going to write a novel someday.
So I don't think that you're going to stop writing.
I don't think so. And it's funny, I didn't graduate with an English major. It was psychology. It's probably the big reason why I still keep writing is because I had a counselor in the school, in the English major, tell me, oh, maybe this major isn't for you. So I was pretty much heartbroken at the time when it happened and just decided I needed to graduate on time. So I switched back over to psychology. But I still kept writing, even though because I just enjoyed it, in my spare time.
Yeah. Do you regret that decision at all?
I
mean, what would have changed, do you think?
Maybe a little bit, but at the time, like every college student, you don't know what you're doing.
Right. And it actually sounds to me like if you're good at English and you have a lot of wonderful English background combined with psychology, that's helpful.
It is.
You can think about your audience, you can think about how perception of what you're writing and those kinds of things. So it sounds to me like it goes together pretty well.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, I had aspirations to be a counselor too, but again, we had to pay bills.
Money always gets in the way. Geez.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the money, what is the actual publishing process like now, and how does that even translate into being able to make money out of writing books or things like that you love?
Well, that's why I still have a job.
Still doing the construction.
Still doing the contracting, and because if I had that answer, I think I'd be like Stephen King, but I haven't figured that out. And everybody I talk to that has written a similar book or like one book or two books is always like, oh yeah, I have a job, and then I do this, So I don't know if there's anybody locally that I've met that has that answer. And if they're out there, I'd love to know what the answer is, because I just kind of wing it still, to be honest.
Well, if they're out there and they have the answer, how would you like them to get in touch with you?
Well, they can go on my Facebook page, Author Matt Rufo.
Author Matt Rufo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the Facebook page.
Yeah,
okay.
and then authormattrufo.com.
Authormattrufo.com.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's a good way to reach you.
Yeah.
There's a contact, an option for contacting you on that site. Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, I was going to ask you, what advice you would give to people who want to do this. And it sounds to me like, you might have some advice. Yeah. It sounds like you want some more advice yourself, too.
Yeah, I think, with anything, if you have something that you really love, you just got to go for it. Like whether starting a business or going for that job or, whatever, if there's a sport that you really want to get good at. It's just not going to happen if you don't, go all in like 150%, with anything. So I tell Sammy all the time, I'm like, she's like, I want to be rich. And I'm like, well, you got to be smart. Sometimes you got to be lucky and you got to work hard. It's not going to happen just sitting at home, watching TV.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Well, like I said, it sounds like she's got great role models at home.
Well, her mother at least.
What's going to happen over time? Now, you're writing children's books. You said you might want to write a novel. She's getting older. Are your books going to change as she gets older?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I have, there's other stories that, have been sitting, waiting in the wings, to do something. I keep waiting for, that important person to maybe like one of them, and who knows, maybe that'll happen. Yeah.
So when you publish the books, do you have to incur all the costs for that? Does the publisher, how does that work? Do you make any money off of publishing in the beginning? Okay.
Yeah, so I have, So I know, you can self-publish or you can go through a publishing company. And it was a fraction of an investment. It wasn't like it was anything big.
So you self-published or you went through a
publishing
publishing
company? No, I went through a publishing company,
Right.
Yep. Because I looked at both and it was like by the time you found an illustrator and typesetting and the printer and blah, 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 blah.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, or like the marketing part of it. That's the biggest thing that I have, is really tough, I think, because there's a million authors out there.
Right.
Everybody has a kid's book. And since I did the first one, it's funny how many people you run into that like you knew back in college. Oh, I wrote a book. Not like 20 or 30, but there's a few, and who would have thought? I wouldn't think of that, as something. And most people are like, what do you mean you wrote a kid's book,
Really, they say that?
Oh, all the time.
Why, what were they expecting?
Like, especially clients that have, that have been with us for like 8, 9, 10 years. They're like, you did what? They think it's the coolest thing, and I'm just like, yeah, it's.
I think people also think it's cool because you did something that you had your heart set on doing, and you followed it all the way through. A lot of people have ideas, right? They sit on them for a long time. You didn't do that.
No. It would have been better if I started 20 years ago, but there's no time like the present, I figure.
No time like the present, exactly.
And my daughter and my wife are the ones that kind of push me, to do it.
It's a great support system that you have. What do you think is next for you and your family?
Oh boy, that's a toughie. I just want to get through the rest of today, to be honest. No.
Well, so far so good.
Yeah.
We got to talk about your 4 books. We got to talk about your contracting.
Music, I think, is the big one.
Music, piano. You're learning piano.
Yeah, I
You're
can't.
Make some tunes to go with the books.
Yeah, I think my daughter will be better than me already. It's when you're over. I'm 47, and trying to learn the notes
Gets a little harder.
Yeah, it's like learning. When you're like you know, 3 or 4 and you're learning to read and stuff like that. It's the same idea. It might as well be, you know, a foreign language, you know, when you're looking at it. But it is fun.
It is. And I wish you the very best. And I do
Thanks.
think that if someone is watching who can help you, that they may just go to authormattrufo.com.
I appreciate it.
So thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Again, special thanks to children's book author Matt Rufo and Framingham Senior Heroes Award recipient Kathie McCarthy, and the woman behind those awards, Glenda Thomas from the Council on Aging. Did you catch the common thread in their inspiring stories? They all had and followed a passion that benefited others, and in the process, they enjoyed new accomplishments and found personal fulfillment, something to think about for sure. Thank you for tuning into the Audrey Hall Show, where you will always learn something new.